God's design is for us to live lives of sexual purity. This is more than just avoiding sex. It's about living in a way that reflects God's design and His best for us. Ephesians 5:3 says, "But sexual immorality or any impurity or greed must not even be mentioned among you as is proper among saints." This verse, it sets a high standard for us as God's people to live differently. Yet, if we're all honest, all of us have failed to meet the standard at some point. Whether it's a past relationship, watching a movie with inappropriate scenes, looking at pornography, reading a spicy romance novel, or even entertaining lustful thoughts, we've all gone outside God's boundaries for sexual purity. Sin is what separates us from God, and there's a punishment for sin. But here's the good news. If we're in Christ, there is no condemnation. We are new creations, the old is gone. In God's call to purity, it's not about shame, it's about inviting us into deeper intimacy with Him. He wants us to experience His best. In perfect purity, it does exist, but we can only find that in Christ. We can never be perfectly pure on this side of heaven, but that doesn't mean we ignore His command to flee sexual immorality. So how do we pursue purity? First, we need to understand that purity isn't a state, it's a pursuit. God's design is best, and even if you've made mistakes in the past, you can experience forgiveness, restoration, and intimacy with Him. I think of the story of the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. Jesus was teaching in the temple, and the Pharisees brought an adulterous woman before Jesus, demanding she be punished. The Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, this woman has been caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What then do you say?" Now they were saying this to test him, so that they might have grounds for accusing him. "He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her," Jesus said. Now when they heard this, they began leaving one by one. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "I do not condemn you either. Go. From now on, do not sin any longer." This story reminds us that Jesus doesn't condemn those that are in Christ. He calls us to something better. He called the woman to go now and leave her life of sin. He called her to a better life, and He calls us to do the same. His design for purity leads to greater intimacy with Himself. It's not easy. Pursuing purity requires intentionality and effort, and we've got to fight for it. One of the reasons sexual sin can be so addictive is that when we engage in sexual activity, a hormone called oxytocin is released. Oxytocin is a bonding hormone that is released in response in many different scenarios. It's what bonds new mothers to their babies through that precious skin-to-skin time. It's also what bonds spouses together, helping them stay connected, even when times are really tough. Oxytocin is an amazing gift from God, but when we view pornography, have a one-night stand, or dwell on fantasy, that same oxytocin, it ends up bonding us to things we are never meant to be tied to. Sin, it twists what God gifted us and makes us crave what is harmful to us. The enemy, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy that which God has designed, and he is crafty. So if we're going to take God's will seriously and abstain from sexual immorality, we need to be serious. We need to be watchful and sober-minded and purposeful in fleeing from our temptation. To that end, let me leave you with one practical tool to help you in this fight for sexual purity. HALT. HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. When you experience these emotions, you're susceptible to making poor choices, and the enemy, he often uses these moments to tempt us. So be self-aware in these moments, and instead of turning to sinful desires as a coping mechanism, like pornography and masturbation, or binge-watching shows filled with toxic relationships where everyone seems to date everyone, we need to recognize the danger and flee temptation. There are a multitude of practical tips like this, and I hope you use them. But remember, nothing is as important as our own devotion to God. It is our love for Him and a hunger and thirst for righteousness that we can ultimately fuel our efforts and walk in purity. Whether you're single, married, engaged, or dating, we are all to fight for our purity. Pursuing purity leads to greater intimacy, not only with your future or current spouse, but most importantly, with Christ.